Hello and welcome to another episode of the Asian Seller Podcast. I'm your host, Meghla Bhardwaj, and today I'm so excited to have with me Debbie Chai, who is a Singapore-based Amazon seller. Hi, Debbie. How are you?
Hi, Megla. I'm really good. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for joining me over here, Debbie. So we met very recently at the Amazon Seller Conference. We were on a panel together, and I heard about your story there, and I was very intrigued. And I wanted to get you on the podcast to share your story and understand how you've really built your brand over here. And you mentioned on the panel, finding products with a gasp factor. So that's something that really caught my attention. I was like, ooh, that's interesting, because one of the challenges that Amazon sellers face is finding products, finding relevant, profitable products to sell. So yeah, let's dive right into the episode. So first of all, Debbie, tell us a little bit about your background and how did you venture into e-commerce?
Sure. Okay, let's start from the beginning.
Yes.
So I initially, in a previous life, worked in news as a reporter and an editor for a decade. During that time, I moved to New York City to work in one of the biggest news organizations in the world. And I loved it. It was great. I loved what I did. Mm-hmm. But I also had a hunger to build something that belonged to me and to also be in control of my own time. So after 3 years in the US, I decided to move back to Singapore and find a new calling, just find something new to do. Mm-hmm. My dad, at that time, he owned a factory in Vietnam making cuticle nippers. So literally, it's very specific, right? Yeah. Stainless steel nippers that are used to cut dead skin off the ends of your fingernails. They're manicure tools. So I said to myself, why not take some of these products and just try to brand them and sell them? So I didn't know what I wanted to do anyway. And I also didn't know anything about business. But I did know that I didn't want to be saddled with the demands of a physical retail store. I needed to find a ready worldwide audience. I also felt the Singapore market was too limiting.
Right.
So I wanted something worldwide. So I chose to start a store on Amazon in the US, and that was quite a no-brainer. Amazon is the biggest brand. It has the biggest market.
Right. So what year was this? When did you start?
I started in 2014.
Okay. And were those products already being exported at that time, or were they mostly being sold in Vietnam?
They were being exported worldwide, but under other people's brands, right? Okay. So OEM.
Right.
Yeah, so I decided to, and the margins were low. When you're a factory and you sell OEM, you really don't make very much, and you struggle. I struggled with the limitations of a factory, power outages in Vietnam, and there were a lot of logistics and labor related problems. So I needed to lift up the business, and I thought if I were to create my own brand and put it online, then we can see whether there's a demand for this kind of goods if I put it under a more sexy brand.
Right. Yeah.
Cuticle nippers also were not very exciting as products. So I decided to just elevate it a little bit.
Right. So then, so you started selling on Amazon US, and did you straight away have your brand? So your brand is called Ray Smiths, right? That's the name of your brand. And how did you come up with the name? And did you start right away under your brand, or tell us about that journey?
Sure. I actually started the brand name under Viba, which is the name of the factory at the time. So it's a Vietnamese name. I did not care about branding back then.
Right.
I didn't understand it. And I thought that if I had to prioritize what I was going to focus my efforts on, it would be more about the product, about the logistics, and about learning how to sell on an e-commerce platform. So I didn't care what brand I put on it. Yeah. And I knew I didn't like that brand name, but I just started with it anyway. And about in 2018, so almost 2 years ago, I decided to rebrand. and create a new brand that is truly me, is something that I can be proud of and that I can front and I can talk about confidently. So Bray Smiths is actually a East meets West kind of name. Bray is Chinese for super sharp. It's the Chinese phrase "jian rui." So Ray stands for super sharp and super precise, which relates to my cuticle nippers. And Smiths is metal workers, smiths, goldsmiths,
Yeah.
silversmiths, right? Yeah, and because I'm Chinese and I lived, I'm ethnically Chinese and I live in Singapore. I worked in the US. I speak English. I speak Mandarin. So I wanted an East meets West kind of name that reflected me. So that's the
Yeah,
story behind the name.
that's very interesting. So currently, do you have other products in under your brand as well, or is it still only cuticle nippers?
So I've been really selective about how I choose what products I put into my range. I do have other products that are complementary. I have cuticle pushers, and I have a line of gel, peel-off gel polishes, nail polish that I'm about to launch, as well as a manicure kit that I'm about to launch. So those are coming out in the next 2 weeks. Um, yeah, I'm very, very selective and I'm trying to make sure that the products that go into the range are complementary.
Right. So, do you sell on other e-commerce marketplaces as well, or only Amazon? And which countries do you sell in?
At this point, I'm only selling on Amazon and I have some distributors in different countries. E-commerce platform-wise, just Amazon. And I sell 9 marketplaces. So that's US, Canada, UK, Germany, France, Italy, Spain, Australia, and Singapore.
Nice. Um, okay, so let's talk about product selection now. You mentioned you're very particular about product selection. So first of all, there's so many, gurus and experts and e-commerce coaches and all out there teaching all of these different methods to select products and look at data and, analyze keywords and all of that. So in your view, is product selection, and we're talking specifically about Amazon, right? So for Amazon, is it more of a science, or do you think it's more of an art, and is it more subjective, where you kind of just uh, use your instincts and just see the trends out there and then launch a product and just because you have a good feeling about it? What is your sense of that?
Yeah, that's a great question, Magla. And in fact, I wanted to ask you that question
Yeah.
because I wanted to see what people have told you. And I want to guess that more people use science and data than using intuition and art. Is that true in your experience?
Yes, in my experience, I think people try to use data, but there's so many methods out there that people teach, and sometimes just people get lost and they don't know which to follow and what's correct and what's the right way. For me personally, I try to make it a science. I try to follow the data and look at keywords and everything, but I mean, me myself, I'm not a very data oriented kind of person, so I end up just it ends up being a bit subjective. And because I myself like the product or I think it's useful, and of course I do try to validate that there is demand on Amazon, that there are keywords that I can attach that product to. So for me, it's kind of a combination of data and science, of art and science.
I totally agree with you. I think I'm exactly the same as you. I struggle with the fact that I know there's data out there that I
Yeah.
can leverage on that can help me be a better seller. But at the same time, I'm also building a brand that eventually, in fact, now hopefully it will survive. It will go out. It will grow outside of Amazon. It will survive beyond Amazon. So I can't just think about what makes sense to sell on Amazon. It has to be benefiting the brand as a whole.
Right.
So then I need to think about what products I care about and what products will actually benefit people. And I think, and so yeah, so my criteria for selecting products is more of an art, and I use my intuition.
Right.
And the main criteria is whether or not the product makes a meaningful impact on people's lives.
Hmm.
So when I choose a product that I'm like, okay, you know what, even if it's a tweezer, we all
Mhm.
use tweezers, and tweezers are important to us as, for personal grooming. But I need to look for a manufacturer that can make this product just a little bit extra better
Right.
than what is widely available. So I'm not just chucking products that I can buy easily and cheaply onto the Amazon marketplace. There's no point just chucking products on it and seeing whether it floats. So it has to be carefully thought through and curated, and this has to be some care in it. So I'm sure there are a lot of sellers who use data and then they buy products that they know will sell, quickly. But whether or not that product makes a difference and makes people feel better, helps them in their lives, they don't care.
Right. I think that's a really valid point, Debbie. And a lot of people, especially new sellers, they really focus on Amazon and selling on Amazon. But you're right. I think people should consider this as, an overall business, and you're building a brand, and think about how you can, sell that product on other marketplaces, or retail, or maybe your own Shopify store. So I think that totally makes sense. So, okay, so we've talked about that. You also mentioned gasp factor, right? So what exactly is gasp factor? How do you define that?
I guess I've touched a little bit on it, about how a product is meaningful or not. But I'm gonna maybe use the example of my cuticle nipper to illustrate gasp factor. So cuticle nippers have to be super sharp and super precise because they're cutting this really tiny pieces of, dead skin
Mm-hmm.
in very sensitive part of your nail. So if your tools are not sharp enough, you end up pulling your skin and you end up cutting or hurting yourself. And there's a lot of stress involved. So if my product can take out some of that stress, and when people go nip, there's like, oh my God, it worked. Um, it really doesn't need to be super duper good, made of titanium or, white gold. It doesn't have to be uh, it doesn't have to be super wow, but if it does the job well, just a little bit better than other products that you can buy, widely,
Mm-hmm.
that is the gasp factor. There's just
Right.
a little bit of a and so because consumers are tired of ending up with unusable, poorly made products that they made online.
Mm-hmm.
So products I look for have to be well made, long lasting, and just do their job a little bit better. That to me is the gasp factor.
Right. Yeah, that's quite interesting. I mean, the product that you sell is very simple and it's very basic. I mean, you wouldn't kind of think of, a cuticle nipper to have a gasp factor. I mean, when I think of gasp factor, I think of something that's, I don't know, highly automated, or something that, does a lot of looks very different or fancy. But you're right. I mean, it just needs to do the work, really well. So how do you go about doing research and, finding what are the issues with products that are currently available on the market, so that you get a better understanding of how you can improve the product?
In the beginning,
Yeah.
because I only had this one product to sell, it was from my factory. I
Mhm.
actually made it a point not to look at the research
Ah, okay.
because there's so many, like you said, there's so many different ways of doing research.
Right.
There's so many different data that you can look at. It gets really confusing.
Hmm.
It kind of clouds your vision. So if I knew what I wanted to do was to take this product, build a brand around it, tell a story, get the product into people's hands, I knew I had a good product, then I really didn't have to care about what other people are doing. And the thing about Amazon is that there are all kinds of people searching for products on the platform too. So there's bound to be people who like your style. At the end of sometimes with all these different competing listings and all the different reviews, all the information that you're getting from Amazon is so overwhelming as a buyer. Sometimes you just go with your gut feel and go with the listing and product that you kind of feel more like they're talking to you.
Right.
So that's how I started out. But now, as I'm adding more products into the mix, I use tools like Unicorn Smasher.
Mm-hmm.
It allows you to look at the sales volume of whatever product you wish to sell. So if you
Right.
go onto Amazon, yeah, you just click Unicorn Smasher and it tells you which products sell better, and then you can compare and then decide what products you want to sell and also how to position your products.
Right. It's similar to Helium 10, right? I think most
Yeah,
of us,
it's like
I'm
a
familiar with Helium 10. Yeah.
yeah, Helium 10 is it's very robust tool. There's so many functions in it.
Yeah.
So I think it takes a lot of time to learn how to use that. And I still haven't really gotten my head wrapped around that.
Right. Okay, awesome. So how do you differentiate your product on Amazon? Because I assume there are probably hundreds, if not thousands, of people selling the product, right?
Yeah, there are a lot of sellers, but not as many as sellers of lipstick and makeup.
Ah,
So,
okay.
which is why I like this category of tools,
Mm,
because fewer people understand it, fewer people really go in depth into the product. So this is the reason why I love my category is because I have experience from the manufacturing side, and I can tell you a lot of things about it, like the type of stainless steel used, the type of carbon steel used for them, the rivets, how the angle of the cutting jaws are better than another product. So I'm sorry, I forgot what question you asked.
I was just asking how do you differentiate your product from all of the others on Amazon?
Yeah. So at, at to a certain level, I don't care about what other people are doing.
Mm,
That's on one hand. On another hand, I also look at what the way other people are selling their products. So I kind of glean a little bit of insight from that. But I don't focus too much on trying to be like them. So I just take all that information and kind of rummage it through my, just kind of like mix it up in my brain. And I put up my listing and I sell my product based on the way I like to communicate.
okay.
Because there's just so much information out there. There's so many sellers doing well, so many sellers not doing well. It becomes quite a jumble at the end of the day. So I just focus on what I do best. I
Mhm.
know my product and I try to make my listing as concise as possible and give the most information that I can.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think it totally makes sense. And I also really like, what you said about selling tools and not some of the more sexy kind of products like lipstick and makeup that everybody wants to sell. Even, a lot of Amazon sellers, they start with home products as their main category, and they do things like, home decor and scented candles and all of those kinds of products that are very competitive. But if you do some of these boring products that are essential, that are really, really very essential, you might have less competition over there. So I think that's a great idea. So is your product mostly for home use, or is it for professional use, like for salons, or does it not matter?
It starts out as a professional product because most of us don't understand it. Like when I first saw it, I was really intimidated. It's a very
Yeah,
sharp tool.
yeah.
But as more of us, and so as a manicurist, as a professional manicurist, they have to learn how to use these tools. But as more of us go and get our manicures done as part of our daily lives, then we get exposed to these products. So now a lot of people are using them at home.
Okay.
So in terms of my target audience, I'm actually targeting both the professional and the home audience. And you
Okay.
have certain markets like the Philippines and Vietnam. Users in those countries actually do go as far as to carry cuticle nippers in their purses because it's so much part of their
Oh,
lives.
is it? Hmm.
Yeah.
Interesting. So do you also do keyword research on Amazon to decide, what keywords to target and what to put in your headlines, and your description and all?
Yes, I do. So I do keyword research only after I've decided what product I want to sell. And then I research on the right keywords to add to my PPC campaigns. And as for the listings, I actually, in the beginning, worked with an expert. I went online and I found a listings optimization expert to help me understand what I needed to do to get my listings better.
Okay.
Yeah, so as an Amazon seller, there can be a lot of demand for you to know everything: branding, logistics, writing, copywriting, and all that kind of thing. It's a big ask for one person. So there are certain things I don't do well at all. So I actually look for an expert to help me with that.
Yeah, I think that totally makes sense. There's, you can of course hire VAs or maybe outsource some of these tasks to people on Fiverr, but there are also a lot of agencies that do listing optimization and writing copy and images. So I think that totally makes sense. So you also mentioned, I think previously, that you did not take any money out of the business for the first few years after you started. Can you tell us a little bit about that, and how long did it take you to be profitable?
The business started to be profitable after it took a while. I was very slow in the beginning. I didn't have the kind of support that sellers today in Singapore have.
Mm,
Like, we were talking just before this. You're trying to create a community of sellers in Singapore so we can all help each other and network. In 2014, there was no such thing.
yeah.
So I started really slowly trying to watch videos from the US, and there's a lot of information there. It was very helpful, but still, it was a very slow crawl for me. It took me, I think, 2 years before I started to make a profit and could cover all my costs. So I still, after those first 2 years, I still did not take a salary because I wanted to pump that back into the business and grow it to
Mhm.
a point where at least now the business is in a much better place.
Right. So when you launch a new product on Amazon, do you have any strategies, or how do you get it on to page one for certain keywords?
I don't monitor that,
Okay.
honestly.
Mm,
I I When I have a new product, the first thing, aside from getting the right photos and the right listing, the right copy, and to put it online,
mhm.
once my product's online and there's stock in FBA, I will go and try my best to get reviews.
Okay.
So if it means um, reaching out to people and telling them about my brand and encouraging them to buy and leave a review, um, that's what I do. And so the first few reviews are really, really important.
Hmm.
And then after that, I just spend my time optimizing my listings and tweaking them and doing my PPC advertising to try to improve it. So I don't have a target about I don't have to be number one. So there's a thing about one thing I wanted to talk about as an Amazon seller is there's a lot of pressure for you to be the best.
Hmm.
I don't feel like you need to be the best because Amazon is a massive marketplace. And to own a decent business selling on Amazon, even if you're second best, third best, fourth best, 11th best, you can still have a very, very decent business.
Right.
So I don't feel the pressure to have to be number one. So I don't push in that way.
Right. Yeah, that totally makes sense. So, do you prefer sourcing from one particular country, or are you still sourcing your products from Vietnam, from your own factory? Is the factory still running?
No, it's not running anymore. So
Okay.
because I had that experience and I know who the players are in the market, I'm buying from other factories in Vietnam. But I also buy from China.
Okay. So
Right
Vietnam
now, I
and
only
China.
source from those two countries, and I've tried to source from Europe, but the margins are not good.
Hmm.
So, and I'm open to trying to looking into India as well.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, you might find such products in India too. So talking a little bit about Vietnam, what sort of difference do you see in terms of the products made in Vietnam and China?
Um, for my product, the it's unique. I'm not sure that what I know about the difference between Vietnam and China is applicable to other people and other products.
Right.
But for my product, the reason why I only buy cuticle nippers from Vietnam is because the quality, the sharpness of the cutting jaws is so much more. It's so much. It's such a higher quality than in
Mm-hmm.
China. The Chinese make all kinds of nail beauty tools, and for
Mm-hmm.
the regular tools like tweezers, you can buy from China. That's okay, but the Chinese cannot get the sharpness in the cuticle nippers like the Vietnamese can.
Mm, interesting. In terms
Yeah,
of prices, are they about the same?
in terms of prices, the Chinese still have better prices for
Okay.
sure.
Mm,
The cost in Vietnam is a little bit higher, but if the product is significantly better, then we can always buy the Vietnamese quality and bake in the product margin and then sell on Amazon. And the good thing about Amazon is the buyers understand quality. So they are willing to pay a little bit more for something that is good.
right. So how do you manage your things like packaging and your branding? Um, is there anything specific that you do to position your brand? Do you do any content, for example, or do you do videos, or tell us about how you develop and position your brand and do some of your marketing.
So my brand is relatively young. So I have to tell my story. I have to tell my story um, to as many people as I can. So I've been using Instagram as my tool.
Okay.
And that is, again, not my forte. So I've hired an Instagram manager. I found her on Upwork.
Mhm.
And this is something she really enjoys doing, talking about colors and putting together beautiful images and also talking to people. So she helps me to engage with my followers, and that that is pretty much the main way that I'm focusing on expanding my brand right now. I also have a website that I've created to sell my product, and that is a work in progress.
Okay, interesting. So do you get do you drive your Instagram followers to your Amazon listing and encourage them to buy the product there? Is that how it works?
Yeah, that's pretty much how it works.
Okay, interesting. And I think Instagram has also allowed shopping on Instagram, right? I mean, you can actually buy products from within Instagram itself. Have you tried that at
Yes.
all?
So I've literally just started that. I think I
Okay.
started that last week.
Okay.
It's exciting because then you can post a picture with like a cuticle pusher in it, and then tag it. And when people click it, it goes. It takes them to your website, and then they
Mhm.
can buy from there.
Yeah, I think social e-commerce is going to be the next big thing, especially now that because of COVID, all of the retail stores and all have been closed, and people are looking to shop online. And there's been such a huge increase in live streaming, right? Have you noticed that as well? I mean, people are live streaming from
Yes.
their shops, from I think even wet markets over here were live streaming. And the other day I saw
You
somebody
can
was
buy fish.
right,
You
yeah,
can
like
buy,
fresh fish, and they deliver it within a couple of hours and all. And
yeah.
yeah, I mean, the other day somebody on my Facebook feed, I saw he was selling fruits, and they were, like literally peeling the fruits up and eating them. And say, oh, this is so tasty, this is so juicy, and buy
I
now. So I
know.
think social e-commerce is going to be the next big thing that it's going to be very exciting.
It is, and anybody can get into it. So it's just about how creative you can get.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So how's your experience been selling on the Singapore marketplace?
Selling on Amazon Singapore or actually any other new Amazon marketplace is fairly easy
Mm-hmm.
because I spent a lot of time on the US and Europe marketplaces. And so it was easy to launch in Singapore because the account managers here are very helpful and very prompt.
Yeah.
All I needed to do was to port my listings over, and they're all in English anyway. So language-wise is not a problem. I ported my listings over, sent my stock to FBA, and then I could begin selling.
Mm-hmm.
The one downside, though, about selling in Singapore is that we don't have sponsored products or sponsored brands yet, which means we can't partake in pay-per-click advertising and make our products more visible to buyers. So that's, I hope that they launch this functionality soon.
Yeah.
Another downside is that the market is very new, very young. It takes some time for Singaporeans to get used to buying on Amazon.sg. So the buying volume, at least for me, isn't there yet.
Mm-hmm.
But otherwise, it's really easy to set up.
Right. And so you're using FBA, right?
I am.
For Singapore. Okay. Yeah, I guess your product is small, so it doesn't cost a lot, I guess. Because some other people I know, they have slightly bigger products, and because the sales were really slow on Amazon Singapore, so they were mostly doing FBM.
Yes.
They didn't want to have their product stored at the FBA warehouses.
Yes, and I
Mhm,
would recommend if you have bigger products to do both, do FBA and FBM.
mhm.
You
Yeah.
can, yeah, you can do that. I do that in the US. So I keep stock in a warehouse outside of the FBA system.
Mhm,
And it's been really helpful because in this COVID um, pandemic, during the pandemic, Amazon US FBA warehouses were severely inundated. They still are inundated now, and they took a long time for them to fulfill orders. And in the meantime, my warehouse was designated as essential. So they could get the product to the customer a lot faster. So
okay.
you have options.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. And did you find that FBM was cheaper than FBA in the US?
It really depends on what kind of deals your shipper or your warehouse has with
Mhm.
USPS or UPS. So yes, you can save a few bucks here and there, but it depends on the product. You know how heavy it is, how big it is. It
Right,
varies.
right. Okay, awesome. So, what is the one piece of advice you have for people who are just starting out in e-commerce?
My advice is not to expect to become a power seller in a flash.
Mm,
It does take time and effort and persistence. And there's so much to learn about selling on Amazon. So you do need to take time to learn that. But the good news is that there's so much good information that's widely available. And there's so many people that are very helpful, people in the same boat as you. So there are forums, the Amazon seller forums, they're a great place to get your questions answered.
hmm. Yeah,
So it's not it's not difficult to do. It's just something that if you want to do, that you need make sure that you're focused on it and give yourself the time to actually do it properly.
that's great advice. And a lot of people actually start Amazon thinking that it's a get rich quick scheme,
Yeah.
and they will, be millionaires. And in fact, a lot of gurus out there, they position it that way. They have these ads on Facebook with themselves posing in front of their sports cars and all. So, but I think, yeah, people need to realize that this is a real business, and if you treat it like a real business, then it will definitely um, give you good returns and be profitable and give you the lifestyle that you want. I think that's one big advantage of FBA, right? And if you sell on any other marketplace, I mean, you yourself have to do the fulfillment or have a warehouse of your own, or I think the fact that Amazon does all of that for you, the customer service and the fulfillment, that's really what makes this a laptop business or something that you can
Exactly.
run from anywhere.
It's the
As
ideal, right? It's what everybody aspires towards, to have a business that just runs in the background while they go off and live their life, just check in on the business once in a while. So Amazon truly allows you to do that.
Exactly, yeah. But you're right, it takes time, it takes a lot of effort, and it takes investment. It's not something that you can start with $500. It is a real business, and you have to invest in it. And I mean, don't give up if you have one failed product, or um, if something doesn't go wrong. I mean, doesn't go right. If things go wrong in the beginning, don't give up. Just learn from those mistakes and keep moving forward. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Debbie. It was so nice talking to you and learning from your experiences. And
Me too.
hopefully we can meet up sometime. And once all of the restrictions are lifted from COVID-19. So we used to host meetups previously until last year before all of this started. So yeah, hopefully we'll meet in one of those meetups.
I hope so too. Thank you so much for having me on your show, Megla. This
Yeah.
is wonderful what you're doing.
Thank you so much, Debbie. All right. See you around. Take care. Bye.
Okay, bye.